Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
There's a stretch of Highway 191 in Arizona that truckers whisper about but never mention by name. They call it the Devil's Backbone, a winding, remote two-lane road cutting through the desert, known for its sudden drop-offs, blind curves, and a growing list of people who drive it and never reach their destination. The story begins with a 32-year-old man named Derek Morales, a long-haul trucker with 10 years of experience and not a single accident on his record. He was hauling electronics from Phoenix to Salt Lake City. The GPS suggested he take a faster route through the mountains, Highway 191. Other truckers warned him against it, but Derek was behind schedule and figured the superstitions were just that. He started the drive around 10:30 p.m., figuring the lack of traffic would help him make up time. The road was eerily quiet, bordered by endless stretches of desert and jagged rock. No lights, no signs of life, just the occasional scrub bush and the dull hum of his engine. About an hour into the drive, Derek noticed something strange. Every few miles there were abandoned vehicles on the shoulder. Not broken down wrecks, just cars with doors wide open, headlights still glowing, as if the drivers had stopped suddenly and walked off into the night. He radioed in to the dispatch to report the first one, a dusty red pickup with the driver's door flung wide and a kid's backpack lying in the road. Dispatch told him to keep moving and call it in once he reached a signal. The further he drove, the weirder it got. One car was still running, its radio blasting static. Another had scratch marks along the windows, deep and erratic, as if something had tried to claw its way in. There were no people, no footprints, just these dead metal husks miles apart. Then Derek saw something he couldn't explain. In his rearview mirror, just after a particularly tight turn, there was someone standing in the middle of the road. No headlights, no taillights, just a pale figure standing motionless. He slammed the brakes, skidding slightly, and grabbed his flashlight. When he stepped out to look, there was no one there. Not behind the truck, not on the shoulder. Nothing but the low whistle of wind through the canyons. He got back in and locked the doors, suddenly aware of how quiet everything had become. Even the engine sounded muffled. Another 30 minutes passed before he noticed the road had changed. It no longer followed the path on his GPS. The map showed he should be curving west, but the road ahead was straight, too straight. He hadn't taken a turn in nearly 20 minutes, and yet the landscape around him looked like it hadn't changed at all. Same rock formations, same dead tree, same rusted green sign that read Mile 34, though he'd passed a Mile 34 10 minutes ago. Derek's stomach dropped. He was looping. Somehow the road was pulling him in a circle. He tried turning around, but every time he did, the road behind him looked exactly like the one ahead. The desert, the rocks, even the stars above, it all seemed to repeat. That's when he heard it, a knock on the passenger door. He whipped his head to the right, nothing. Then another knock, this time on the driver's side. He flicked on the cabin light, still nothing. Then came a scraping sound, like nails dragging along the trailer. Slowly, deliberately. Derek turned the side mirror outward and saw the outline of something crouched near the back tires. Not an animal, something humanoid, thin, almost emaciated, with limbs too long to be right. He floored it. The truck groaned and shook as he sped down the endless road, ignoring every sign, every rational thought. He drove for what felt like hours, the road unchanging, the figure always just out of sight in his mirrors, too fast to be human, too real to be a hallucination. At 4:17 a.m., the truck lurched, and suddenly the road spilled out into a well-lit gas station just off the main highway. The GPS recalibrated. He was 5 hours north of where he started, with nearly a full tank of gas and a logbook that didn't match the time. He hadn't made any deliveries. He hadn't stopped. His clock said 1:12 a.m. He radioed dispatch again. No one answered. A month later, Derek quit trucking altogether. He never explained why, except to say, that road isn't meant to take you anywhere. It takes from you. Highway 191 still exists, still shows up on GPS, still offers a tempting shortcut through the mountains. And every now and then a car is found abandoned on the shoulder. Headlights on, doors wide open, no driver in sight.
Story number 2.
In 2003, a young woman named Tasha was driving cross-country to start a new job in Oregon. She was traveling alone, and somewhere in northern Utah, her GPS rerouted her off the interstate due to an accident ahead. The new route took her down a lesser-known state highway, Route 41, supposedly a scenic detour through small towns and farmland. It was around 6:30 p.m., and the sun was just starting to drop behind the mountains. At first, the road seemed fine, paved, empty, nothing but wide-open plains stretching in every direction. But after about 20 miles, Tasha realized something was off. The highway hadn't passed a single town. No lights, no signs, not even a gas station. And the further she drove, the darker it got. The road narrowed until the lines disappeared completely, and the pavement looked more like faded concrete, cracked in long, spidering patterns. That's when she saw the hitchhiker. He was standing on the shoulder, facing the road, his thumb sticking out stiffly. No bags, no coat, just a white shirt and jeans, his face hidden under a gray baseball cap. Tasha didn't stop. She wasn't dumb, but something about him unsettled her deeply. She passed him going about 50 miles per hour, heart racing, eyes forward. But 10 minutes later, she saw him again. Same man, same outfit, same posture, standing on the shoulder like he'd never moved. She slammed the brakes and stared in the rear view. No one. Road behind her was empty. No side streets, no cars, nothing. She drove faster. Another 5 miles and she passed him again. Only this time, he turned his head slightly when she drove by, just enough for her to see a glimpse of his face, or rather, the lack of one. No eyes, no nose, just smooth, pale skin stretched over where a face should be, like someone tried to erase him. Tasha screamed and floored it. Her hands were shaking, knuckles white on the wheel. She tried calling 911. No signal. Then, ahead in the headlights, she saw a small building off the road. A diner glowing in the dark. The parking lot had 3 cars. It looked normal, safe. Relieved, she pulled in and parked fast. When she stepped inside, the place was dead silent. An old jukebox in the corner was stuck on a single note, humming. The air smelled like dust and burnt oil. Behind the counter stood a woman in a yellow uniform, not moving. "Hey," Tasha said, trying to hide the panic in her voice. "Can I use your phone?" The woman slowly turned her head. Her eyes were wide, blank, too wide. Her smile was frozen, stretching too far. "You must have taken the wrong road," the woman said softly. "They don't like visitors." Tasha backed out, heart pounding, and ran to her car. As she turned to leave, she noticed something horrifying. The same faceless hitchhiker was now standing behind the diner, arms at his side, staring directly at her. No expression, no features, just watching. She drove like hell. After what felt like hours, the highway suddenly spat her back onto the main interstate. The road behind her vanished from her GPS, completely gone. When she stopped at a gas station to catch her breath and asked the clerk about Route 41, the man frowned and said, "There's no Route 41 out there. That whole area was shut down back in the 80s. Landslides took out half the roads. No one drives out there anymore." She showed him the map on her phone. Blank. The route she'd taken? Erased. Just empty terrain where the road used to be. Tasha never found that diner again, or any record of it ever existing. But for years afterward, whenever she drove long distances alone, she'd occasionally see a man on the side of the road, thumb out, face hidden by a cap. She never stopped, and she never ever looked at him long enough to see his face.
Story number 3.
In the winter of 2011, a man named Elijah Griggs, a 44-year-old divorced father of 2, was driving through rural West Virginia on a lonely stretch of Route 50. He had taken a detour from the interstate after hearing a weather report about an incoming blizzard, trying to cut through the mountains to beat the storm home. He was driving a silver 2006 Chevy Suburban and had enough gas to make it across the pass. That's what he thought. He hadn't seen another car in over an hour when his engine sputtered. The fuel gauge showed nearly a quarter tank, but the Suburban began slowing down like it was out of gas. Elijah managed to pull over just before the truck died completely. His phone had no service, and the temperature was dropping fast. All around him was nothing, just forest and a long, winding road that vanished behind thick pine trees and gathering fog. He waited in the vehicle for a while, hoping another driver would come by, but nobody did. The last light of day drained from the sky, and the forest started to feel heavier somehow, like it was pressing closer. That's when he noticed something strange. His headlights, which he'd left on, were illuminating the road ahead, and a figure was standing just at the edge of the fog. It hadn't been there a second ago. A man, tall and completely still, dressed in what looked like an old-fashioned driver's uniform, black cap, long coat, face turned down so Elijah couldn't see his features. Elijah honked the horn. No reaction. He turned off the lights and turned them back on again. The figure was gone. No crunching footsteps. No movement in the fog. Just gone. Thinking his mind was playing tricks, Elijah turned on the car's dome light and checked his phone again. Still dead. He looked up, and the man was standing directly in front of the Suburban now, inches from the hood. No sound. No warning. Just there. Elijah jumped so hard he nearly hit his head on the ceiling. The man raised one arm slowly and pointed down the road into the woods. Not the highway, the tree line. Then he walked away, vanishing into the fog like he'd been swallowed whole. Elijah didn't follow. He locked the doors and stayed in the truck, and convinced he was dreaming or hallucinating. But a moment later, something moved in his rearview mirror. Another figure. This one standing behind the Suburban, also wearing a driver's uniform, but its face was wrong. Stretched. Grinning too wide, like someone trying to imitate a human but getting the details off just enough to unsettle you. Elijah grabbed the keys, tried to start the engine again. It turned once, twice. Failed. The windows began to fog over from the inside, like something was breathing on the glass. The temperature plummeted, and then from inside the fogged windshield, a handprint appeared. From the inside. He threw himself out of the truck and ran. He didn't have a flashlight, no signal, no plan, just panic. He followed the road blindly, barefoot after losing his shoes in the mud, until he found an old gas station about a mile down. The building was abandoned. No lights. No power. But inside there was an old rotary phone mounted to the wall. It was ringing. Against every instinct he picked it up. A woman's voice whispered through the static. "Why didn't you follow him?" The line went dead. Elijah blacked out. He was found the next morning by a county snowplow driver, curled up in the gas station, shaking and barefoot. No vehicle in sight, no truck, no trace of the Suburban ever being on the highway. When police investigated, they found that the stretch of Route 50 Elijah claimed to have broken down on hadn't been used in over 40 years. It had been permanently closed and rerouted after a rock slide in the 1970s. According to old records, a bus used to take that road before it was closed. In 1963, a full passenger bus had crashed on that very turn, slid into a ravine in the fog. Everyone on board died, including both drivers. Sometimes, people still report seeing a man in an old driver's coat on Route 50, just standing there, silent, pointing. And if you see him, remember this: don't follow. But whatever you do, don't stay on the road too long either. Some passengers are still waiting for their ride.
Story number 4.
In 2007, a man named Travis Rowe was driving back to his hometown in Nebraska after visiting family in Montana. He was making good time and decided to push through the night, cruising down Highway 20, a long empty stretch of road that cuts through miles of nothing but flat land and fields. Around 2:15 a.m., somewhere between Chadron and Valentine, he noticed a strange flashing ahead in the distance. Not headlights, not a police cruiser, just a flickering red and white glow coming from the roadside. As he got closer, he saw it was an old emergency call box, the kind from decades ago, the kind you rarely see anymore. Its light was blinking like it was malfunctioning. Next to it was a car pulled off the shoulder, half in a ditch. The driver's door was open and the interior light was on. He slowed down. Not because he wanted to help, he didn't see anyone, but because something about it felt wrong. He rolled past slowly, looking out the window. The car looked like it had been abandoned in a hurry. There were deep scratches along the passenger side. One of the tires was flat. The call box was swinging slightly, like someone had just walked away from it, but there was no one around. Travis kept driving. A few minutes later, he saw headlights coming up behind him fast, way too fast for that kind of road. He checked his rear view and saw a car coming up like it was trying to ram him. Just as he tensed up and reached for his phone, the lights vanished. Just gone. No swerving. No sound. The road behind him was empty. That's when he noticed the mile markers had changed. Instead of counting up as he drove east, they were counting down. He didn't remember turning around. He didn't remember any exit or fork in the road. But suddenly he was back at the emergency call box. Same car, same open door, except this time the interior light was off and the back door was open now too. Travis hit the gas. For 20 straight minutes, he didn't take his foot off the pedal. No music, no distractions, just him and the open road. The road that now felt too quiet, like the world had gone hollow. Then he saw something lying in the middle of the highway. At first, he thought it was a deer, but as he got closer, he realized it was a person, lying perfectly still. He swerved around them, heart in his throat, checked the mirrors, nothing. When he finally pulled over and got out, the air was dead still. He left the engine running, took a few shaky steps down the road, and there was nothing there. No body, no blood, not even tire marks. He turned back toward the car and stopped cold. Someone was sitting in the passenger seat, not looking at him, looking forward. He froze, pulse hammering in his ears. Then, slowly, the figure turned its head, just slightly, enough for Travis to see that it wasn't someone he recognized. It was a man, face blank, eyes all wrong, wide and glassy like a doll's, mouth just barely open like he was whispering something. Travis ran. He didn't stop until he reached a small diner off the main highway, nearly 20 miles later. When the waitress asked if he was okay, he told her everything. She listened quietly, then pointed to a map on the wall. "There's no call box out there," she said. "Not since the 80s. That stretch hasn't had anything on it for decades." He insisted. He described the car, the body, the man in his seat. She asked what time it happened. When he checked the clock, his stomach dropped. It was 2:15 a.m., same as when he'd first seen the call box. No time had passed. His phone had reset to midnight. His GPS had no record of the route. And later, when he checked his dash cam footage, all that showed between 2:12 and 2:16 was 4 minutes of static. Travis never drove Highway 20 again. Some say there's a stretch of that road that loops in on itself, a kind of dead zone, a place where time stutters and the highway forgets to let you go. But the worst part is, some who get caught in it never realize it. They just keep driving, thinking they're heading home, until the road runs out.
Story number 5.
In 2013, a woman named Clara Evans was driving home from a business trip in Nevada. She was on a long, empty stretch of highway, U.S. Route 50, also known as the loneliest road in America, when the sun began to dip below the horizon. It was a warm evening, but the light was fading quickly, and Clara still had a few hours left to reach her destination. She had no cell service, and the radio in her car wasn't picking up anything but static. But she didn't mind the quiet. It was a peaceful drive, or so she thought. Around 8:30 p.m., she noticed something strange. A car behind her had been tailgating for what seemed like too long. It was a dusty, old sedan, barely keeping pace with her in the darkness. Clara tried to speed up, but the car stayed right behind her, matching her every move. It was unsettling, but she didn't want to overreact, so she pushed forward. The road stretched out before her, endless and empty. She glanced at her rearview mirror again. The sedan was closer now, much closer, too close. But she couldn't see the driver's face through the tinted windows. She started to feel her heart race. There were no other cars on the road. There were no lights. The next town was miles away. She should have been alone, but she wasn't. Clara decided to take a sharp turn off the highway to see if the sedan would pass her. She turned onto a narrow dirt road that ran along the edge of a small mountain. As she accelerated, she glanced back. The sedan was still right behind her, its headlights burning bright in her mirrors. She quickly realized that the road she'd taken was completely desolate. There were no streetlights, no signs of civilization. She was completely isolated. Her hands gripped the wheel as panic slowly began to sink in. The only sound she could hear now was the hum of her tires on the rough dirt road, and the faint sound of something, like a whisper, echoing through her car's interior. Without warning, she saw the sedan's headlights flash in her mirror. The car was speeding up, gaining on her. Clara floored the gas pedal, but the sedan seemed to match her speed, no matter how fast she drove. It was like the car was hunting her. She could hear her breath quicken as she tried to make sharp turns, desperately looking for any kind of escape. The road ahead curved sharply, and she felt the car fishtail for a moment before she regained control. She glanced back, expecting the sedan to be right behind her, but it was gone. Just like that. The headlights were no longer in her mirrors. The road was empty. Clara slowed her car to a stop, her hands trembling on the wheel. She looked around in the darkness, the air thick with unease. Nothing. No car. No sound. Just the vast, empty desert around her. She wasn't sure whether to keep going or turn back. She decided to continue down the road, hoping to find some sign of life. After another mile, she came across a small, run-down gas station. The flickering neon sign in front looked ancient, and the whole place seemed abandoned. But there was a figure standing by the door, a man wearing a weather jacket and a cowboy hat. She pulled up to the pump and rolled down her window. The man stepped forward, his eyes hidden in shadow. "You lost, miss?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. Clara hesitated. I think I'm okay. I just need some directions back to the highway." The man nodded slowly, eyeing her car with a strange, unsettling look. "You don't want to be driving that road at night," he said. "Not after dark. People don't come back from that stretch." Clara felt a chill run through her spine. She wanted to ask what he meant, but the words didn't come out. Instead, she muttered a quick, "Thank you," and got back in her car. As she drove away, she glanced at the gas station in her rearview mirror. The man was standing still, watching her, but now something was off. The faint light from the gas station revealed that he had no reflection in the glass. The figure was just standing there, motionless. Clara's stomach dropped, and she didn't look back again. By the time she made it to the main highway, she was shaken to her core. When she passed the mile marker sign that marked the end of that stretch of road, she didn't look to see if the sedan was still behind her. She didn't care. To this day, Clara says she hasn't been able to shake the memory of that man and the empty road behind her. A month later, she found out from a local that many people who drive that stretch of Route 50 experience strange things. Disembodied lights, cars that follow too closely, and figures that vanish as quickly as they appear. No one knows who the man at the gas station was, but there's an old rumor about that stretch of highway. Sometimes, it's not just the road that's lost. It's the people who drive.